Hey everybody, it is Richard Harris and Scott Leese with another 2023 edition of the Surf and Sales podcast. Uh, Super excited today to speak with Daniel Weinder, who I've known for years. I know, Scott, you've known him.
For
And
less years than you.
well, that's just because I'm older. So
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. So before we bring Daniel on, quick shout out to HubSpot for reaching out to us and saying, hey, we want to put you on the HubSpot podcast network. So that's kind of cool. We appreciate them doing that. Obviously, it means there's probably some other cool sales podcasts over there you may want to check out. And don't forget, we have Surf and Sales coming up in May of 2023. Still with a couple of slots left. This whole podcast is dedicated to convincing Daniel to come. So he didn't know he was going to get pitched super hardcore. And we'll go from there. So Daniel, welcome. Want to give folks the quick background of your context. You know, you're this awesome, amazing AI chat GPT type founder. So tell them what you're up to and what's going on.
Yeah, thanks, Richard and Scott. Thank you both for having me on today, guys. Cool to be here. Everybody, I'm Daniel Weinder. People call me Daniel Weinder, but it's Daniel Weinder. That's right. Got a background in B2B sales. My first gig out of college was at Oracle on their sales dev team. And fast forward, 6-7 years now, I developed like a kind of obsessive passion, if you will, for a lot of the inefficiencies tied to what it means to be effective as a salesperson and as a professional, because in lots of ways you're kind of always selling yourself. So seeing where AI was going a handful of years ago and getting really good at the monotonous workflow of research and message composition and pressing send on an email, crossing your fingers and hoping what comes back is a positive response. Doing that tens of thousands of times kind of helped me develop this interest for like patterns that lie beneath it all. So jumped ship out of the corporate tech world to start Autobound with two of my best friends, Tanner and Kyle. Kyle runs product. Tanner's our CTO. And fast forward to now, it's been really crazy to watch the whole generative AI craze take over recently. So we're thinking of ourselves as like the chat GPT for sales by making it really easy to write personalized sales emails. So yeah, excited to share more about what we're working on and a bit of my background and story today as well.
You think that we will move beyond personalized sort of prospecting emails and more towards like personalized responses, follow-ups, rebuttals, things like that?
Do I think that?
Like, yeah. Do you think it will go that way? Further down funnel is what I'm getting at. Everybody's trying to automate the top of funnel things, but what about automating things that are more down funnel?
I think over time, the entirety of it will be automated in some way, shape, or form.
Did you hear that, Richard? That's sci-fi, like I've been telling you for like 10 years.
Yes, I'm the grumpy old man who says, no way. So
tell everybody why Richard's wrong, Daniel.
Think about like, private equity companies invest millions or tens of millions into technology that can make and execute trades in real time with no human involvement. They built like a marketplace around the sale and purchase of assets without, like, people control the computers, but that stuff happens without someone being super close in the loop. So I think over time we'll see a lot of the same things across B2C and B2B sales, where technology makes a lot of the transactions and we're just pulling the puppet strings of the AI on top. But even at some point that I think will get more and more turned into technology away from.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do see it, in the B2C world, business to consumer, this is already happening, right? I can spend $1,000 on an iPhone and not talk to a human. I could spend $2,500 or $3,000 on a television without talking to a human. I could spend, I don't know, what could you spend 10 grand on without talking to a human either? Are we there yet?
Anything. You could buy $10,000 worth of gym equipment and outfit your whole garage into a home gym. You never have to talk to anybody.
Yep, you could do that. Like, is that kind of the progression you've been seeing? Is that I mean, it feels right. Like feels like that's the right thing.
Yeah, we'll see how quickly it all happens, because I think in lots of ways, especially at the enterprise, processes are still pretty antiquated, as are like the slowness of buying cycles. So to make the disruptive changes to a sales and customer support org that is the transition away from human to human sales more towards automation, I think it's going to take some time. I think we're already seeing, like, by writing personalized sales emails automatically, we're automating 20 or 30% of the SDR's function, which they didn't want to do in the first place. But like even that, there's a good deal of disruption and friction to adopt for large organizations. So it'll be like a piecemeal approach. Like tech will continue to move really quickly, but it's also going to be a function of like how quickly companies buy and implement.
I wonder if that slowdown is what I've seen for a long time, particularly at the SDR function, right? Like that's where everybody's seeing this right now, is that as soon as it becomes completely automated, the VP of sales and CRO might freak out because they don't know how to fucking do that job anyway. So now having humans to blame goes away, other than the person at the top of the place. And I wonder if that's some of the hidden reluctance for some of this automation, although I think people are also finally seeing and recognizing the messages are better. They do become more personable, and it can go faster to a degree. But I that's just my hypothesis. I don't know that I'm right about that.
We'll find out.
Find out. That's the best way to say it. Like,
changing gears a little bit. Let's talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is starting a business with your friends, which is a gnarly, endeavor for a lot of people. Some people just won't do it because they're like, not going to risk it. Some people do it and things go squirrely. Some people do it and it's the best thing ever.
Scott, are you just saying, how do I get out of doing business with Richard?
Well, that's the second part of my question. The first part for Daniel is really like, were you worried about those things in starting the business? Or do you still worry about them at all?
Yeah, I'd say yes and yes, but less so than I would with someone I didn't have that level of trust with.
So for you, having that level of trust initially made it easier to start the business versus like a total stranger type thing that, you just met. You met this person, like this person knows how to build incredible product, but I've only known them for like 6 minutes. Now I'm going to go into business with them.
Even if you put two phenomenally bright people together, if they don't mesh well, like culture is remarkably important at all levels, but like the founder too. If it's just a few folks in a room hashing it out, stressed as shit about a million things, if you're not getting along well and speaking the truth, then like you're bound to fail.
So how do you pick which friends to go into business with? Because if you've got a decent number if you've got 1 million friends like Richard and everybody wants to work with you, how do you figure out which ones to say yes to and which ones to be like, no?
Sure. Yeah. I think it's, what are they good at?
Like complementary skill sets, you mean?
They more so have to complement the things you need to do well to be successful as a company than they have to complement what the founders do together, I think, in a way. Like, as long as you get along well, even if you're not both working out of Google Sheets, one person's in Excel, or like one person's really harsh, the other's ultra nice. Like, I think those things are less important than the overall, we're able to work together and like move the needle forward. What's gonna, I think, really make or break the company is like, are they good in their function for what needs to get done? It's like versatility is also pretty key, because the team's wearing a lot of hats as a must have.
Yeah, so pushing on that, for you, right? And did you have to have this internal realization to say, I'm really good at this piece, but my partner's really good at this, and we're going to discuss that this is what you're going to own and this is what I'm going to own, which I think people do. But was it hard for you to have that realization about yourself? Because I think sometimes the egos get in the way, right? And what did y'all decide? How did y'all decide that?
Great question. I think so. It was just Kyle and myself. So Tanner didn't join until after a year and a half in, our CTO. So there were two non-technical co-founders running the ship for a while. And I talked about this death spiral of like not having enough money to build enough product, to sell enough product, to prove enough traction, to raise enough money, to build enough product, sell enough product. So getting out of that horrific snowball early on is super tough to do. But Kyle and I said, I had a good deal of investor connections going into the founding of Autobound. And Kyle's been a kick-ass salesperson with some product expertise before. So we just said, we talked about it for a bit and we're like, the worst decision is indecision. So we made that move pretty quickly and went head first into it.
So when did y'all both realize like, okay, were you too overwhelmed with things that you need to bring in Tanner? Or was it, okay, now, we're in front of our skis a little bit too much and we've done great here. Now it's time to do this. Or was that also a hard discussion?
As first-time non-technical co-founders, it's difficult to attract the caliber. It's difficult to attract someone like Tanner really early on because they're that type of person might be making $250,000, $500,000 or more at a big tech company. So pulling them in Kyle and I took no salary for the first like 9 months. It's tough to convince someone like that. So we actually cycled through 2 CTOs prior, like getting off the ground. And it was a mixture of like skill set fit, culture fit. Like I was telling you, Scott, like that has to be super, super strong.
Yeah.
Across the founders. So we got really good advice from a guy named Mike who ran Carbon Black, which sold to VMware. Was like an informal advisor to us for a while and really technical, brilliant guy. Helped us think through the type of person that we needed as like our third co-founder and running technology. And Tanner had, he hadn't done like the startup thing necessarily before, nor had he been a CTO, but we had the culture fit. He was, and he is like freaking incredibly scrappy and knows this problem space now really well, but also the tech that you have to build. So we were searching for that person for a while.
So when you say culture fit, right? Because I think this is so true, sales and business, we still have the bro thought. People think about being social, and then we think about technical people and we think they're introverted and they're quiet, and that's not necessarily the case. And since you cycled through a couple of CTOs, what defined culture fit for the two of you? We could have a beer with this guy and he could talk to us without talking over us. Like, what did that mean?
No, I think it's more of a mutual respect and so good communication. So like you can kind of infer what somebody else wants of you at all times, and you're easy to communicate with to help. I mean, that's kind of vague, but a lot of people aren't good at like, we've got 30 problems on the list today. Can we have a real true conversation about each one of them, or the top 5? It's less like, is this person down to go out on a Saturday and have 4 or 5 drinks and like be buddy? I'd say like effective communication is huge. And for us, this is at least one of like the tenets I think is super important in running a startup. Is it's super binary. It's 0 or 1. You're either all in or you're all not. You're all out. So the folks we've worked best with, whether this is a function of me as CEO or something that other startups experience too, is like we need freaking like go-getters, people who are super hungry, determined to work, that aren't going to, log on at 9, off at 5. Like that kind of thing just, I don't think supports the quick development and hunger of like the startup that you have to have.
How did you prepare yourself for that? Because, you mentioned that you started your sales career at Oracle, and I could be wrong, but my perception of Oracle and the environment and people that I've known from there is the antithesis of some of what you're talking about in terms of the desire, the passion, the hustle, and all that. It's a totally different beast building a startup than working inside of a massive machine like Oracle.
Yeah, no shade on Oracle, but it's not a well-oiled machine. Like a lot of the I've got like this vivid memory to being shocked and awed that a company with at that point 55 billion in cash could have that many problems with a sales org they just put 800 people into. Like it felt like they'd have everything figured out, dialed in. I wouldn't relate my like drive and passion that I'm running Outbound with anything I learned from Oracle. Like what I learned from Oracle is like, holy shit, this problem is freaking huge.
Yeah.
Issues of sales and prospecting and how companies go to market. Like the more friends I had that I spoke to who were in B2B as well, I was like, damn, like every single person is struggling with this. It's not just Oracle, but even they haven't figured it out yet. And
so now you get so many people struggling with these problems and challenges, and you enter a space that is hot right now, but arguably starting to get crowded. How do you differentiate yourself from the noise, from everybody else there? My assumption would be this is one of the challenging things to do. Like Richard and I start an event business. How do we stand out? Well, our assumption was, well, if we go small instead of big, and if we go to the beach instead of the Marriott, that's a differentiator, right? So how do you think about that? Does it fire you up? Did it fire you up to like see the category kind of being validated by all these other people jumping in? Or is it like, should I really do this? There's already people here. How do you think about all that?
Well, we'd been doing it before the category really blew up. We started working on this back in like 2019. I think generative AI technology being made far more available has made it much easier for teams like us and others to build more quickly. And I think that acceleration curve is going to continue to get steeper and steeper, or more easy to build like new innovative tech off of. If I had to think about like differentiation, that's part of why we focused solely, at least initially, on let's do like hyper personalized cold sales emails, because that's something that like literally every single BDR SDR struggles with, and whether or not they admit it or not, like account executives and customer success reps do as well.
Yeah, everybody does. Yeah.
Other people are doing like, we're doing marketing content and blogs and social media posts and LinkedIn posts. So the defensibility, in my opinion, comes down to like data acquisition. You need a lot of good data to better train the large language models for more specific use cases. That's what we started doing with focusing on personalized cold sales emails. And from what we're seeing, we're getting some of the best feedback out there for us doing that. But long term, back to what you were asking before, like how much of the sales process will be more automated? Is it just first touch, or is it the negotiation, objection handling through the funnel? The company with the strongest go-to-market, the company that's got the best content, I think, like paired with the right feature set to facilitate like a really easy adoption, and their go-to-market is going to be the one that takes the cake, in my opinion. It has to be super freaking easy to use. So the PLG motion lends itself well to that. And I think we're like the more companies in the space pushing towards that, it's exciting. It's, nerve-wracking at the same time, because, Outreach has their announcement in 2 weeks, or their release in a couple of weeks with personalized, I don't know how personalized they'll be, but like AI for sales emails. ZoomInfo is posting about ZoomInfo chat functionality with that embedded into their OS. Salesforce has been quiet, but
Yeah, they're just going to buy somebody and ruin it, in my opinion.
That's what they did last time, I guess.
But that being said, for anybody at Salesforce, Daniel will be happy to sell.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've got a treasure chest of data, and like it wouldn't be. Yeah, so we just launched an interface on Salesforce. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do inside the CRM. That's part of what I'm really excited for too. Like CRMs weren't built for salespeople, but now that there's tools that easily analyze data really quickly, like all of a sudden the same stuff that I used to spend hours searching through in reports and whatnot inside of Salesforce, you can pull up in freaking 2 seconds or make value out of.
Dude, I think you just not renamed your company, but you came up with your subject line, your tagline, which is, CRMs weren't really built for salespeople.
Yeah, not at all.
That is a great quote. Scott doesn't use one, and it's well known, and I talk about it whenever I can.
Because I'm a salesperson, and it wasn't built for me.
Right.
I've been ahead of the curve.
Right. As always, he's ahead of the curve. Do you, the validation, right, of this chat GPT, like just what's exploded in the last 4 or 5 months, and everybody's rushing to it. One of the things I'm always curious about, and I'm curious to your opinion of, is, hey, it can go write some really cool stuff. That's good. It can encourage that piece. As long as there's an actual conversation, when do you see the AI becoming so good it can tell us buyer intent? Meaning if Daniel's pitching to me, right, and you want to try and engage, well, is Richard really interested or not interested? Right. And then you combine that with maybe an email that we've had, right? So the call recording plus the emails plus this. Are we even there yet? Or is that the next step? Or we're past that, Richard, and you're just not paying attention?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the measurement of buyer intent is actually it involves the generative AI hype we're hearing about, but I think it's more like the predictive AI side, looking at huge amounts of data that's not necessarily just text or voice, but more company attributes and what's happening in their market, their industry, blended with like the cool stuff that 6sense and Bombora and G2 are doing with like measuring site traffic and who's searching for what. That I think will take a bit longer to come to like fruition of predicting a sale or knowing exactly who to reach out to that's ready to buy your product right now with some degree of certainty.
I'm not even looking at it from the prospecting side, right? Like I like that idea of like, okay, statistically, we think this might be someone you should contact. Like I could see that. And I love that. And I think some of that stuff has already been there. Like these people use these number of tools on their website and that help, like we've seen that stuff around. You and I've had a couple of email exchanges. We've had an actual conversation. Daniel gets an email, your system turns around and says, okay, Richard's intent is probably at, 55 or 60% based on these questions or based on this information. Like, do you think we're there yet? Sort of in the funnel versus, the top of the funnel stuff.
Well, how would you differentiate that from kind of what I was talking about with what's the statistical probability of somebody saying, yes, I'll buy your product? Or is that what you're saying?
I think maybe we're saying the same thing, right? Yeah. And maybe what I heard you talking about was, based on this, here's who you should reach out to. But maybe that's not what you were saying, and it's just how I misinterpreted what you said. So, and I do think that all that other stuff matters in addition to the conversation.
100%.
Ultimately, though, it still comes down to that conversation. Like, at some point, it's like, okay, it looks like this person's doing these things. It looks like they're doing these things, therefore they should buy. But at some point, based on the conversation you and I have as humans, that becomes a big deciding factor, particularly if Richard's looking at 3 other people, right? So you want to know, well, how does Richard view you versus some of the other tools in your space?
Yeah, I think we're not super far away from it. you need a lot of the big language models are trained on kind of everybody's information, not just an individual's. So like knowing the best messaging for surf and sales to pitch a founder to get them interested when they're looking at other conferences, like would need some uniqueness to knowing what's worked well for you guys in the past relative to other conferences. That kind of stuff I think will be made more available pretty soon. Like the whole fine tuning concept is making it easy for anybody to create their own models, or for a company like us to say, like, welcome aboard Adobe sales team. We're going to start training your own model and your own messaging to be used internally. And I think that will, that's what's going to kind of kickstart more of like the predictive accuracy of the right messaging based off of who you're selling into or what attributes that they have. But it's like even right now, the content that a lot of that we can produce and some other players like Jasper out there will be, if you had to match that with like a more randomized message, like it will be more statistically accurate and relevant to the person you're reaching out to. So like AI is already making ultra relevant content suggestions.
Yeah.
But saying with more certainty that not only are we going to send this message, but this person has like a 50 or even if it was 20% chance of saying, yes, I want to buy. We're still a bit a ways from that, but not far. I'd say like, years, maybe.
Well,
it's coming.
What we're not far from though is quote unquote, everybody or the majority of people utilizing a tool like Autobound. And what I don't know that people have figured out yet is what makes one person a better user of Autobound than the next. So Richard and I are both on the Oracle sales team. We have used and purchased Autobound. Why am I good at it and Richard?
First of all, let's correct ourselves. Scott, you're never going to be good at it as technical.
Why is Richard so good at it and I'm not? Assuming we both are trying to actually use it. How does one be better than somebody else at using the tool?
Yeah. I'd say it's for the same reasons that even if you had no product at all, you were just making cold calls, you might be better at making cold calls than Richard. And it would come down to like, you have a better process or strategy, which we'd boil down to like, you have better text, like you say better words. So like he or she or whoever contributes to the best content on the system, as the system learns what works and what doesn't. And like the human influence definitely plays a role in that, makes it smarter.
So that means I'm stuff like I'm asking better prompts.
Pretty much.
It's that simple. Scott's better at asking better prompts. Therefore, he'll be a better user at Autobound and get better results.
Is it that Scott's better at asking prompts, or is it that Scott's more willing to try different things?
It's going to be both, actually. That's a great point.
Okay.
Which is true. Scott is better at trying things than I am.
Yeah. So we might give, you want to write an email to somebody, you click a button, we give you 5 options. Any user can just pick one option and that'll help the model because we know it's better than the other 4. Users who will have like more influence over the AI might say, I will pick this option, but I'm also going to tweak the message a bit. Or, you know what, it didn't include the fact that.
So they don't just take it and run with it. They take it, review it, and then tinker with it, add a little bit of their own flavor or, make it a little bit more accurate, maybe things like that.
You ever use like Waze before?
Yeah, I tried that years ago and ended up giving up on it, but yes.
It'll say like, please, man, on your right, like tap yes to confirm if you saw this person or not. And most people will never do anything. But still the fact that you're using the app and driving your car is helping their tech get better. But like whoever's saying, yes, I saw that cop and they were right there is making the system even more accurate.
Which is interesting too, because it's like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do with all those Waze points I'm getting?
Sure, press anything.
Nothing, right? It's like It's like ridiculous,
Yeah.
which is also why I like Apple Maps better, because it also Apple Maps tells you what to do ahead of time, which I love. But
What this all kind of pushes towards, though, which I think is going to be one of the biggest.
We're back. In case you didn't go anywhere, we did. Richard's internet crashed right in the middle of Daniel's sentence, but we're all still here. We fixed it. We're not going to try to make Daniel complete his thought because it was like 5 or 10 minutes ago, but we're going to try to wrap. Daniel, we usually end every single show by saying, how can we be helpful to you? What questions do you have for us? So take a minute here to think about something that you might want to ask us. And we just want to thank everybody for listening to the Surf and Sales podcast and for HubSpot for allowing us to be part of their podcast network and for their support. So Daniel,
Yes.
what can we do to be helpful to you?
Great question. How about this? What is the one subject line what is the one subject line that if I were to send you an email pitching you Otterbound with, you would open up?
I will answer and give full credit to our friend Ross Pomerantz for Corporate Bro, which, because I asked him this question like a year and a half ago. I said, what's your favorite? And he said, your mom said I should contact you.
Oh, man.
Just to get an open. Now, you said just to get an open. That doesn't mean you're going to get a reply.
Oh,
I was like, that's pretty fucking genius. Like, so kudos to Ross for keeping all of us sane.
On that tangent, you could come up with a lot of other ones that I bet get you even higher open rates, but it's a good start.
Yeah. So you'd have to be careful because God forbid someone's mother's passed away.
Let's make sure we're not endorsing.
I'm not going to use that, but
yeah, I think other than the obvious ones that are like, I want to hire you right now. Anything that really shows somebody knows me a little bit, you know, if you sent me a note that was like kind of pop culture reference, like The Dead Presidents, which has to do with the movie Point Break, that would like completely suck me in. I would be like, okay, that's pretty good. This guy somehow knows that Point Break is my favorite movie. And he's not just saying Point Break, he's like referencing something inside of Point Break. I would feel seen. That would probably open it.
Right. I love what you just said. You would feel seen. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Is that not the
essence? That on purpose? Yeah.
I think that's the definition of personalization. Does that person feel seen? Which I don't think I've ever heard anybody say it that way, but that was really smart.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to describe it. As for me, I'm first of all, I'm an inbox zero guy. So in most cases, I do read every subject line. I'll tell you what doesn't work is starting with that RE colon thing. That pisses me off.
I hate that too.
That doesn't work unless, now, Daniel, if you tell me statistically, actually it does work, I'd use it. Like I'd be okay.
I still wouldn't use it because I hate it.
And again, there's a difference though between open rate and response rate. So that might get a high open rate, but if it runs into people like Richard and Scott who are like F you, then that might not be the right subject.
Yeah.
I like that. I do like anything that strokes my ego. I don't need to feel seen quite as much as Scott. I'm less of the heuristic around that stuff, but it could be because I train to it a little bit. So I'm a little bit more, I don't know, compassionate or whatever, but I also look at it and kind of go, ooh, is this going to be a good one or a bad one? Again, because I train to it. So I'm looking for them. So I may not be the right person to answer that question based on a traditional salesperson, right?
All I heard was Richard's trying to end the show by saying he's more compassionate than me.
That's
all I heard.
I've got one more question for you guys. Am I and it's a small sample, I guess. Am I the only person who actually reads every email I get that's sent from a person? So if it's like a marketing blast, I don't read those because it comes from an alias, like the company's name often, or like this person's marketing team. But pretty much every single message that makes it into my inbox, I will look into. Is that weird, or do you guys do it yourselves?
I do that same thing, but I also think that we are massively, massively in the minority.
Yeah, I know that,
The
Scott
very,
has
very,
inbox
very
zero.
smallest of minority, I think we're in.
I don't know.
You don't think so?
I have this strong suspicion that most,
Interesting.
and we're gonna do a blog on this at some point, that most studies around, and they're done by the companies that pitch marketing and sales tech, are a bunch of bullshit when they talk about open rates and reply rates and use this or do that, this many words, this many characters, this tone.
Well, that will be an interesting study to pay attention to and read. So make sure that you hit us up when you hit publish on that one.
Yeah, I actually believe some of that data because it's a starting point, right? Like, so I have to take a look at that with a grain of salt and try to figure out if it's going to work for me, because it might work in the context of if you're sending it to HR, but it's different if I'm sending it to the IT or the development department. So I don't want to hear the, 45% increase in open rate when you use this subject line, unless you can give me greater context, right? Because that's the piece that I feel like is missing. I think the data is out there. I don't know, like that would come out in someone like y'all where you can aggregate a lot of data from different places. That to me is what's interesting, and why you have to A/B test everything.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let you guys know what we learn. That'll be a fun one.
Yeah, I think that's a piece of it. I also think too, we're in the minority too, because I don't know, Daniel, are you in inbox zero? At the end of the day, how many emails are in your inbox?
I don't use, I'm not. I've got,
If I look at your phone, how many commas are there on the emails available? Is it one?
I use a bunch of filters, and I've got a shortcut for marking things as read easily. So I've got 40,000 emails in my inbox.
Oh God.
I've read them all. Like, and they're organized in a way where like things rarely slip through the cracks.
Listen, you can't organize 40,000 of anything, dude.
Oh,
No.
Thing is, you can. You just go about it with
No, that's not a. So
no. We don't have enough time left in this podcast to unpack what Daniel just dropped right now.
Right.
Holy smokes.
I've built a career off making email efficient. You should talk about it sometime. I'll teach you guys a thing.
I'm more than happy to talk about it, because what you're doing is not fucking efficient.
Yes.
And
we really should have started.
Everybody, no, I'm just kidding. So
we really should have started the show with this. Daniel, show us your inbox. We would have gone a whole another direction.
We should
maybe next time.
Maybe we should start every podcast with it.
That's not a bad point. How do you go about managing your inbox? That's an interesting one.
That would be a good study. Not a bad idea. All right, everybody. Thanks for spending some time with us. Daniel, we appreciate it.
Thanks, bud. Sorry for all the technical glitches, Daniel, and thank you for hanging in there. I have no clue why my shit shut down. So, and also thank you to HubSpot for putting us on their podcast network. We really appreciate it. Daniel, good to see you, my man. Always good to see you. And we expect to see you in May at Surf and Sales, right?
Same, Richard. Yes, sir.
What's the subject line I need to send to Daniel to get him to respond with a yes? I'm coming to Surf and Sales, Scott. That's the message we should have asked Daniel a long time ago.
Yeah. Limited time. Last free ticket.
That's pretty good. Well done.
Well played. Well played. Thanks, Daniel.
Bye, everybody.
Bye for it. See you guys.